Holy Gospel. Peace be with you all.
And with your spirit.
The reading of the Holy Gospel according to the St. Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord. Glory to you.
The Lord said, if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father also will forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. And when you fast, do not look dismal like the hypocrites, but they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have received the reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by men, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For there your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
Glory to you, Lord. Glory to you. The Holy Spirit will come upon you.
Lord of Jesus Christ.
Forever.
Please be seated. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today is Cheesefare Sunday, or better known as, it should be better known as, Forgiveness Sunday. As we progressed through these first few weeks, we have had readings about forgiveness and reconciliation, and then last week was also the Sunday of Judgment. And it is said that those of us who are able to forgive, that is as close to God as that we can truly become, is able to forgive other people. And this forgiveness that we have is something that we must learn. In the epistle reading, St. Paul says that many people, right, have been asleep. This slumber that we Christians, and I'm going to put it mostly on us Christians, that we have been asleep for many years. The sleep that we have had has allowed us throughout the last few years to allow prayer to leave the church, the schools, has allowed oppression of the churches, and especially these last few years, we've allowed many different sins to encroach upon the sanctity of life itself. But those things, even those things, are something that can and will be forgiven. But you must come to God with a contrite heart that is willing to bend the knee, that is willing to say, please forgive me, have mercy on me. A lot of times, it is very hard for people to come to confession. I encourage confession. I encourage confession more than I do mostly everything else. Because with confession, you start to get to this place that you become clear and clean. For those of you that were here at the beginning when the iconographer Chris Gossi was here, you can see, and the reason why I pulled these out is that at the beginning, it was this, right? At the beginning, this is what we saw when it all started. When Subdeacon Matthew went and got this wood from one of the, I think, Home Depot, it had to be cut down, right? And this is where it all began. And then the transformation into this. This, from here to here, is something miraculous in my mind. And for those of you that were able to see that transformation, I think you better understand what it means for us to have the icons, especially ones that are hand-painted. See, as I have told you numerous times, Father Demetri is here at St. Nectarios to be a stop sign, a yield sign, a one-way sign, a U-turn sign. I am just a sign. I am just a person that loves you so much that I want to spend an eternity with you. God willing, He allows me to enter the kingdom of heaven. So that way I can see you. I can spend an eternity with you. And I can rejoice with you. And my job is actually to get you here. My job in my life at St. Nectarios, whoever is in my life, is to get you here. To have nothing left but the bareness and the openness that is needed. As Chris was doing this icon, he started out with the wood, and then he did 12 layers of white gesso. And then as time went on, he began to put the gold. He began to put the lines. I got to help to put the lines. I got to help to put this red in here. Some of you were able to put the gold in. Some of you were able to help with the halo. Some of you were able to help all the way to the very end. But this is our goal. True, at St. Nectarios, he has fallen asleep. He has entered into the kingdom of heaven. He is the one that is interceding for our parish that is named after him. But he too had to get to this point. He too had to get to here before he got here. This is our goal. And to get here, it requires a breaking. It requires to be wounded. It requires to suffer sometimes. It requires us to hurt. And as the layers go on, and as you realize what it takes for somebody to get to this point, you realize layer after layer after layer after layer after layer after layer is put on. And that is truly what the Lord wants for us, is to strip the layers of sin from us and to start to layer us with righteousness and holiness and purity and grace and hope. Those pieces of paper that I handed out, I want everybody to write down on top of that piece of paper the one thing that is holding you up from getting here. Every one of us have something. Every one of us are burdened by one thing that stops us from eliminating all the rest of the sins that are in our life. I myself have written down things that I have experienced in my life and things that I have experienced through people coming to me with confession. And I would say to you that it's normally the same thing. Variations, but namely the same thing. Now, at the top of this list that I have unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is a huge obstacle to getting here. Unforgiveness is a huge obstacle because normally the unforgiveness that we have is not only for other people, but it's also an unforgiveness for ourselves. It's an unforgiveness for ourselves because we can't see past ourselves in order to allow God to forgive us. And we must remember the parable of the man who went into the master and asked him to forgive him his debt. The man that went into the master, one of the parables that we have, he owed that man 10,000 talents. You want to put that into perspective? That is 30 years for one person, or 300 years of pay for somebody. It's like $5 billion. And when he went in to the master, he asked God to forgive him. He asked the master to forgive him. Give me time to pay it off. How on earth, if any of us owed $5 billion, not million, $billion, would we have time to pay that off? Any of us. And then as soon as he received that forgiveness, as soon as the master wiped out his debt, he didn't say, how dare you? He didn't say, how you're going to pay every last penny. I'm going to take your children. I'm going to take your wife. He didn't say any of that. He says, all right, I wipe off your debt. And as soon as he walked into that room, he walked out of that room, he found the person that owed him $150, put his hands around him, and the guy did the same thing, get down to his knees and said, please forgive me, give me time. He says, no. That is the unforgiveness and the hardness of heart that so many of us, every one of us, have had in our lives. And how dare any of us not forgive when the Master has forgiven us every bit of our debt? How dare we even not forgive ourselves? That unforgiveness is something that will poison each and every one of us. That unforgiveness will poison every single person that has ever lived and ever will live, because we just don't understand God. And the only way you can get there is to begin to forgive and to be forgiven. The next thing I have on this list is anger. One of the things that all of us struggle with is anger. One form or another, we all struggle with anger. And that anger usually leads to unforgiveness. There are sometimes people, I'm going to tell you a story, that if he ever watches this sermon, he's going to laugh. But when I was in school, I don't know if I shared this with you, I can't remember things I shared. But when I was in school, my hip was out of its place, not completely, but the nerves get sucked in and I can't walk. And I had to walk down the stairs, and I found this guy from Africa named Father David. And I knocked on his door. And I asked him, please pray for me. And he was on the phone. I remember him on the phone. This guy was black as midnight. Okay? And I still remember his face. And he pushed me back. And he says, okay. And he closed the door. And a couple months ago, I realized that I've been angry at this guy for 20 years. He has probably no idea. And then I hadn't forgiven him for 20 years. But as God slowly starts peeling the layers of my life back, I start to realize all the things that I have harbored in my heart. And then I realized to myself, as now that I'm a priest, because this guy actually ended up becoming the Metropolitan of Africa, Metropolitan Neophytos of Africa, I realized that sometimes we get mad at God because we go to him and say, oh Lord, help me with this, oh Lord, help me with that. But sometimes he is busy taking care of people that are fighting in a war. That sometimes my prayer needs to just be put on a shelf. It's not that it's not important. But who knows what Father David was dealing with that day that was 10 times more important than I was. But I held on to that anger for years and years and years. 20 years. Something so simple. But as I draw closer to God, as he starts stripping the layers back, as I'm getting closer and closer to here, he is starting to reveal to me all the things that I have been holding back, not being able to forgive. As loving and as kind and as wonderful as I am, right? My bride now, right? That's my pride talking. But I'm also a sinner beyond measure. Because compared to God, who wiped off my debt completely, I held on to something stupid for 20 years. Stupid. That colored me so I could not be able to forgive. One of the other things that I wrote on this list was substance abuse. So many people out there, the people that we know, struggle with substance abuse. Being an alcoholic or a drug addict. And the thing I have underneath here as well is pornography. People struggle with these things. And often Satan hooks us from a young age. I remember the first time, and I'm going to be completely 100% open and transparent. I remember the first time when I was with my uncle out at the ranch. My Uncle Bill, who's in God willing that my prayers have gone to God's ears. The first time he sent me to the truck to go get the .22 rifle in the back seat. I pulled the back seat down, and that was the first time at 9 years old that I saw my first pornographic magazine. And of course, my heart leapt, my heart was beating, and my heart beat almost out of my chest, but I still picked it up, and I flipped through a few pages, and I was like, I can't get caught with this. And I put it back, I grabbed the .22, closed the seat, but I remembered where it was. And every single time that I would get into the truck with my uncle, as soon as he left, I would pull back that seat and I'd take a couple peeks at that. And that was the time where Satan first hooked me. And it's been a struggle ever since. Those sins that we struggle with, though sometimes we don't even consider sins, hold us back from becoming this. And I want so much to draw close to God so I can get every single one of us to this. I can't do it, but that's why I'm here, to help you and show you the way. My love for the Lord is so great that I would be willing to do anything to show each and every one of you the way. And all it takes is courage. All it takes is courage to ask forgiveness of God and ask forgiveness of each other and to offer forgiveness for the things that people may not ever ask you to forgive them for. Because the only thing that you're doing is hurting yourself and stopping yourself from getting to this. So today, on that piece of paper, I want everybody to write down the one thing that is holding them back. I know you probably have more, but there's always one thing. Every single time that I have done confession, the first thing that people mention is the first thing that they struggle with most, as long as they have courage enough to come and say something. And then, when I am done doing this sermon, I want every single one of you, and I know it's cheesy, but it's effective. I want every one of you to come up here and bring this piece of paper, and I want you to put it right here. That, if you can pick it up, if you can find anything that's left, then I will take back my words. But that right there is what it is when God forgives you and I, every one of us, deserve what the Lord gave us because He did it for us. We deserve it because if we didn't deserve it, God would have not sent His only Son to free us from the tyranny of evil and sin. God would have never freed us from the chains of death. So let us glorify the Lord. And I pray that each one of you, when I'm done with this sermon, will come up. All you got to do is hold it to the flame and just let it go, and it will burn to nothing. But don't hold yourself back. And glorify the Lord that His mercy endures forever. And I pray that one day, some of us find this, and that we are here. That some of us get to this, and not some of us, every one of us get to hear, because we need, as the world gets worse and worse, we need people like St. Nectarios that was born during some of our lifetime. I don't know if you know, but the movie does not depict that St. Nectarios actually was in jail. He was arrested and thrown in jail. My dad knew some of the guys that were in jail with St. Nectarios. But this, I'm telling you, when I first looked at this, I was like, how on earth is that going to become this? But God knew. It's the same way that each of you, when you come to me in confession and you come to me with humility and say, how on earth can I get here? But God has allowed me to see past the flesh and bone and allowed me to see the wonder and the beauty of each and every person. Let us glorify and praise the name as we prepare today. And I hope each and every one of you that is able to come tonight for Forgiveness Sunday. The Vespers tonight. Make time. St. Paul says, awake, O sleeper. Don't be asleep anymore. And come up and ask forgiveness for the things that you have done. Amen. Come up and put those pieces of paper to the flame and let it all go. I was the biggest sinner, that's why I used the biggest piece of paper. Everybody do it? Ask God to have mercy on you and forgive you of everything that you have done. And don't hold back anymore. Because we are one day closer to His return than we were yesterday, and we are one day closer to the day we draw our last breath as we were yesterday. Let us glorify and praise the name of the Lord today. There you go. Amen. And if any of you were not able to come, Chris is planning on coming back, and he's going to be doing all of the little icons as well, so everybody will actually have an opportunity to put your hands on the icons and to help do some of the icons. That's what some of this wood is for. He's going to do all the apostles as well. Okay?